Alright. How are we doing, people? Wow, the heat, man, I'm feeling it. It is super hot. Alright, so let me just share this first of all. Un momento. Alright, just sharing this, folks. Alright, I'm just gonna get just sharing this. Alright. Almost done. Right, I'm just sharing that. Where's my oh damn, let me just grab my book, folks. Just one moment, because I just pencil in sometimes 1-2 things that I don't forget to say. So just un momento. Right, I'm back. Ah, right. I am back. Here it is. Alright. So, how is it going? Alright, people. Alright. The heat. Is the heat killing us or what? I tell you, England, the UK, is not catered really for any weather. If it gets too hot, we just boil and burn because the houses are created to insulate heat. If it snows, they tell us don't go anywhere. If it rains for like a day, the streets start flooding. What is happening to the UK, man? So cool. Right, folks. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم مرحبا bienvenidos a todos Wan Ying Layth Sasriyakal as well for our any Punjabi speaking and swagatam people, swagatam. So, dare I forget Pakhair Ragale. Right, Islamabad, people there from Islamabad. Alright, Ahlan wa Sahlan, Khushamadid. Right, people, what a week. Hell of a lot going down. I've rattled some cages as always. It's got to be done. Don't you think so? You've got to rattle some cages sometimes. Pata chalna chahiye. You know, there's a poet, he says, actually the first line to his poem is epic. He says, jo usulon pe aan chahe to takrana zaruri hai. You see, if your principles are getting questioned or people are trying to get you to compromise them, then you must clash. Takrana zaruri hai. Jo zinda ho, to zinda nazar aana zaruri hai. If you're alive, then let it be known that you're alive. I like it. This is what we've got to... Suzanne from Australia, from down under. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum. Ahlan wa sahlan. Right, so... Exposed. Kaha matlab hai baba, exposed. Bro, Rochdale crew always every Monday. Wajad Hussein, the Rochdale. Rochdale, यार कुछ बदनाम हो गया है. It's been blacklisted, but it's all good. It's good to see that you're holding down the fort in a positive sense. I mean, you can always say, you know, so what? बदनाम अगर होंगे तो क्या नाम ना होगा? What happens if we're but it's good to see that all this positivity from Rochdale. Is it wajib to trim your Yar al-Ihtisham is his name, Umar Ihtisham. Ihtisham means yar jaise sharam karne wala, you know, like somebody who has shame and modesty about himself. And the question he's asking, is it okay to trim your cajones? Is it okay to trim them every week? I mean, why do you want to trim them for? Kaatte jaoge baba, you're just going to keep cutting them. Then the reproduction no work, you know, if you keep cutting them away. Well, you see, that's what happens, I guess. Maybe he's been trimming them already. So, a lot of due to blood loss. Bechara. He's thinking he's doing something Islamic. He comes, they go, he goes, I'm just doing the Islamic record. He's in crutches. He's like, oh no, it's Jummah again. Yaar, sunnat puri karni hai. We got to do the sunnah. Hi. Some are saying that Sheikh Akram al-Nadawi Sahib. I'm going to speak about that later on. I've got to speak about kya. I've been rattling some cages, people. This whole Bukhari thing, and I'll discuss that. There's Abdullah al-Andalusi. I want to discuss some of his comments. There's our Wahhabi brethren, the Wahhabi defense. So much, people, for you. Sab janta ke khatir. So, people, what is going on? Ustad Yasin is in the house. Ahlan wa sahlan. Somebody said, are you mad? Hell yeah. I wouldn't have it any other way. So, because if you're insane in an insane world, are you technically insane? Chalo, I'll leave these kind of... Abdullah al-Andalusi, I'll talk about him in a moment. Any recaps, right, people, the week, what's been going on? Those of you tuning in, click like, click share. Get this, spread the love out there, people, spread it. We sit back, tea drinker is saying he sits back and enjoys. Ustad Muhammad ibn Muhammad Khalid, ahlan wa sahlan bik, wa marhaban. Right, so, Wajad Hussein has said, rest in peace for the brothers. Yet that's an awesome reminder to begin with, that may Allah grant ease to the families of those who lost their beloved young, youthful children to what appears to be joyriding. So these are the dangers, people. These are the dangers. Youth, it's got to be contained, because you see, one is yourself and one is those that you will hurt by your loss, I guess. I mean, the parents, the families. It's tragic to hear. It happens, I guess, you know, it's the way of the world, but even though we need to be more careful there was some kind of police car chase, and presumably they lost control and completely drove into some, I don't know whether it was a tree or what, and the car was just completely destroyed and 4 passengers had died. So may Allah grant ease to the families that are suffering after them. And really it's unfortunate, because it's a tragedy stemming from foolishness. So that's the thing. That's what makes it so much worse. Right, so Sid is in the house. All right, Sid has won some medals. I saw your Facebook post with the judo going down. All right, keep it up. Keep it up. Right, so Muhammad Habib come to Pakistan. Pakistan, there's amazing things going on in Pakistan right now. I'm really excited about the whole Imran Khan thing. I did watch, I had to skip through his speech, but the recent speech in Lahore that he gave in Minar-e-Pakistan, really interesting to see how this will play out, because you see, Pakistan has a hell of a lot of bureaucracy, and he's naturally upsetting those bureaucrats by trying to cut their luxuries, their unwarranted kind of undeserved luxuries that they had. So I wonder how this will play out. I mean, may Allah grant him success. I totally am a fan of his work, and you know, so cool. Right, let's see what else is going on. Why do we seemingly always get schooled about what not to do rather than what to do? I agree. Samir Hasagic from Lots of Love from Serbia. Alright. Right, back at you, man. All of you in Serbia. Wow, Serbia. People, ya salam. May Allah grant ease to the people of Serbia. They too underwent a lot of suffering. You know, this is what we need, humanity, the message of compassion, of love, of mercy to spread throughout the earth, really. Somebody saying it's easier to complain than give solutions. Right, somebody's once again going back to the hair trimming question about, I heard it's wajib to cut your hair. Why do you want to come and cut my hair? I'm quite okay. I'm quite capable. I can cut my own hair. Somebody's writing that it's wajib every 40 days. Look, relax yourselves. Just trim it. It's hygienic. Just do it as often as you can, as regular as, you know, without, you don't have to have like a timetable and say, uh-oh, it's now August the 6th. I must today embark upon trimming the basement. You don't need to be so robotic about it. Just naturally, just do it, man. Just chill a little. You know. So, what else is going on? What else, people? What else? Right. Is a Muslim woman allowed to go out without her husband's permission? Is she an adult? Which is a rhetorical question, by the way, because obviously child marriages are categorically haram. In case somebody responded by saying no, that would be like, huh? What the hell? So, of course she's an adult, and of course she doesn't need his permission. Right, so, but the thing is, look, there's something about living, when you live with people are involved in each other's lives, unfortunately. But they are, to some extent, they're involved in each other's lives. You know, so people might say, hey, you know, what time, oh, where'd you go today, or what? And people do this kind of stuff, I suppose. Or they might say, listen, I'm just off to this place, I'm just getting this, because I suppose they share a somewhat of a life together. So chalta hai, you know, this kind of stuff. You can, you know, you have that communication, but it's not really it's not like she's your slave, you know, or employee that she has to be precise or take permission or take leave. She doesn't have to do these things. If she tells you, I mean, this is a kind of like a mutual courtesy. That's what it is. You know, we embarrass Islam ourselves by this kind of outlook, really. These days, would men need permission nowadays to go out there from the wife. You know, so many people I know, they're not allowed out. I'm serious, they're not actually allowed out. Can you believe that? They need permission. And then if they're out, the phone. It's like, where are you? Where are you? यार ये आदमी जिए तो जिए कैसे? You know, what is this? What is this? You know, this under the thumb. But there are a lot of men like that as well, believe it or not. Obviously, I wouldn't know from first-hand experience. But I've seen the expression on the face of the other. You know, when I've thought, what in God's name could bring such fear to the face of this person? What could it be? Has the Antichrist himself arrived? Has World War III? I mean, what has happened? Then you realize, acha. It's the missus from home calling him. That happens as well, I guess. Cool. Right, so what else, people? Right, so this week also, earlier on this week, I met up with some of these Baraka Boys, if that's what they go by, I think. Some of the good lads, local, Malikis, friends, students, that kind of stuff. But, and they had some interesting musical kind of get-together. And we also did an interview, which was really interesting, actually. It was a discussion with those of you who know Faisal. I don't know if he spelled it Faisal or Faisal Salah or Saleh. Faisal Saleh. Man, he has been gifted a voice, I have to say. He's been gifted a flute from the flutes of Dawood alayhi salam. Honestly, the man knows how to sing, I'm telling you. And he improvises on the spot. You can't believe that he just made that song up on the spot. And he did, and he does, and countless. And I was totally wowed. And then we had a kind of discussion that was recorded, where he was going through a lot of questions, struggles that he had regarding faith in the past. And amongst that was this whole discussion on slavery within the Islamic context, and I suppose sex slaves. They never used to call them sex slaves, by the way, but being able to have sex with slaves, with female slaves. What was the whole story about this? So, I mean, he didn't fully understand, so we first had to go through some DVDs. We had to go through some videos and some all these illustrations. Then he was like, I get it. No, I'm kidding. Do not cut and paste that, people. Right, so this, it was a really interesting dialogue, though, honestly. It was intense. It was difficult. There were some difficult questions. But hopefully that will be, that was hosted by Mamadou. So Mamadou, those of you, Mamadou Tal, friend and student, those of you probably know him already through social media. So hopefully that will be out soon, and you guys can watch that discussion. It was interesting. Right, so what's the Maliki stance on Nikah al-Mut'ah? Right, Maliki stance. What stance do we? What position do we? Yeah, flexibility in the stance, you know, no. Right, so I've said before that, look, with Nikah al-Mut'ah, you know what, in the coming weeks I will do a detailed discussion on Nikah al-Mut'ah. But I've said before that, look, this Mut'ah thing, there's a diversity of opinions. Some ulama believed it to be permissible, like the legend Shaykh al-Islam of the Malikiyya Ibn Ashur. He writes in his tafsir, and other people, and I think, look, all of these permissions are out there. Some people said it was haram, some people, and this thing that making it a Shia thing, that's just dirty politics, you know, dirty sectarianism. It's not a Shia thing. I'm just being honest, it's not a Shia thing, although it is today pushed off as a Shia thing, and then it's Sunnis kind of try to insult Shia by this kind of stuff, and I think That's not fair, really. We should be just. We should be just. Look, I too disagree with the Shia ideology and their theology and stuff like this, and that's up to them. I mean, but my point is that in this day and age, first of all, we need to build bridges. That's very important. I have said that in my understanding that, look, I like to view religion objectively. Religion, a lot of religion is just folklore. It's just this kind of folkloric tradition that has been put together for people. And Islam too has fallen victim to that. It's a great amount of it is folklore today. And the Shia faith is no exception to that. It is also, has a huge amount of folklore, as does the Sunni tradition as well. The Shia tradition, however, I feel heavily focuses on certain kind of myths. I'm calling them myths, obviously. To them, I'm using the term myths in more a kind of discourse analysis sense. I don't mean, to them they're not myths, they're realities, but it relies on these concepts. The concept of, for example, tragedy, the concept of redemption. These kind of things, as you see in other religions as well, this is kind of like a universal theme found in many religions like Christianity, how Jesus Christ redeemed himself for mankind, how the tragedy he suffered, the tragic suffering, how he was tortured. And you see similarities with, for example, Hussein amongst the Shia kind of tradition of how he redeemed mankind and how he's portrayed sometimes even in pictures almost Christ-like. And you get these kind of themes in other religions as well. So to me, that this is really like part of that folklore tradition. I mean, human beings are going to do it. Like, it doesn't, I see it, but I also see that most people will always want folklore. For most people, they won't want kind of pure reason and stuff like this. In this day and age in the West, it's a bit different. But otherwise, people throughout history have generally had an inclination to folklore because it kind of settles well with them. And they kind of, it makes them, it works for them. Okay, so I disagree with a lot of, but let's be fair when we disagree with even other groups, whether it's going to be the Shia or whatever. Let's not just falsely attribute stuff to them. Like this kind of Mutah thing that people have turned exclusively into a Shia thing is wrong. It's not a Shia thing in essence, although the Shia do have it. It's actually a Sunni thing as well. Anyway, I mean, but I think most importantly, look, we have to today, in my understanding, we have to work towards building some bridges because it's not going to work otherwise. This hatred, for how long will we have hatred, in our hearts? Most Sunnis don't know anything about Shia Islam. Most Shia probably don't know hardly anything about Sunni Islam, except just circulated stories. And, for how long will we hate? So we need to start trying to extend friendship and love and compassion and, understandings, and just not discuss the controversial stuff. Cool? Right, so what else is going on, people? What are we looking at? Let's take some questions. The hadith of the Prophet not praying for Najd. Najd is really that part of Saudi Arabia where somebody hails from. Who? Guess who? We all know who we're talking about. Shaykh al-Islam. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Najdi. So he hails from. Najd, the Prophet in that hadith, I mean, if it be true, he said that this will be a cause of great tribulation. We can take that with a pinch of salt, but the reality is that the Wahhabi sect has been a cause of great tribulation, although it has brought some good with it as well. Like I said, if we're going to be just, then I think they did kind of cause a reaction and a wake-up call for the majority of the Muslims, because Muslims were kind of completely out of it. They were just zoned out until the Salafi is kind of arrived. One could argue, really, I suppose, that's perhaps the other Salafis that did a lot of that questioning, like Sheikh Rashid Rida and other people. But still, they did bring back an importance towards Hadith and stuff like this, which is good. It's good, but then they overdid it. You see, they overdid it, and they caused a lot of harm in the process. They kind of created a culture where we now almost worship Bukhari, which is a huge problem, because this deification, this semi-godlike status of Bukhari that we have, so this statement of it is the most authentic book after the Quran, is utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. This, this thing. Utter nonsense. And it's really been kind of pushed by the Wahhabis and the Salafis, and then the other madhabs, especially like people like the Deobandis and other people who are insecure, they also started to big up Bukhari. This is the problem, isn't it? Like, in order to show the world that you're secure, you too start boasting of that thing that your adversary is bringing. Typical. But yeah, so then the kind of Deobandis bigged up Bukhari so much as well. And then a lot of the Hanafis, and they took it to like a divine status as well. And now we have a problem. Because now we're realizing there's a lot of cobwebs in this story. And some of these cobwebs I've highlighted. I've said, what's this problem? And now people are upset. They're like, what? What the hell? This Zindiq, this Kafir. Yaar. So, but this is the problem, you see. Had have you not, decided to worship Sahih Bukhari, we wouldn't have this problem. Had have you just accepted it like a useful book that's useful, but like Imam Malik taught, that you accept and reject from it. Like that's what the scholars of Hadith said. Ibn Abdul Barr, all these scholars, he said nobody would have been we would not consider somebody to be a true scholar until he learned to accept and reject Hadith. So had they done it like that, we wouldn't have had a problem. But obviously, because the Salafis are dogmatists, they create pictures of God from Hadith, from these isolated Hadith. They take these isolated Hadith and draw pictures of God. I mean, not physically draw, but they mentally kind of... So to them, they read things from Sahih Bukhari and then say, God is this. So, God has two right hands. He doesn't have a left hand. He has two right hands. God has one leg. What have they turned God into? He has one foot. He has one shin. He has a back. He has some teeth, according to them. He has, I think, 2 fingers. What is this, man? That's like, and he jumps and he moves. Astaghfirullah. Wallahi, I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up, wallahi. You just have to read the Aqidah books. So, this is what they write. And then they say after that, oh, don't picture it. Behave. How can you not picture it? How can you not picture it after I've said all of those things? Like if I say to you, look, there's a clown and he's climbing out of a gutter and he's got like pink hair, but don't picture it. Of course I'm going to picture it. What the hell? If you don't want me to picture it, don't say it. Yeah. These people don't let us be in peace. So now, obviously, to them, this is a greater problem, because how on earth now do you prove your Aqidah since Bukhari has a problem? And you know what it is? Look, let me clarify something for the record. Yeah, I need to clarify something. Statement time. I have no issue with Sahih Bukhari or with Imam Bukhari I have no issue with these things. Let me be very clear. Okay. Just in case people want to misquote me, then at least listen, hear me out. I have no issue with Imam Bukhari. I think is an amazing legend of this ummah. I totally have love and respect for Imam Bukhari, the Imam who died, by the way, who died oppressed by Muslims of his day and age, oppressed by these same Salafis back then, who we call in Aqidah Hanbali, and oppressed by the Hanafis. The Hanafis, they actually, Imam Bukhari for several years was deemed a heretic. He was called a stray. He was called a zindiq. He was called somebody who you can't take your faith from. Pretty much the labels they throw at me, they threw at Imam Bukhari. And for years on end, nobody took a single hadith from him. And he died like that. Bechara. You know, this is who they today like to worship. Their own ancestral, you know, the people whose books the belief that they're following, the system of the Salafis, this kind of Wahhabi Aqidah that you have is traditionally called Hanbali Aqidah. Them and the Hanafis tortured Imam Bukhari to death. So Imam Bukhari, Bijara, you know, like he was going from town to town. He went to Nishapur, they wouldn't even allow him in from the gates. Pleaded with people, can I take some refuge? They wouldn't let him in. You know, he would go from town to town. You know, even when he spent in his last few years, when one of the great, what's his name, Abu Ahmad ibn Faris Nisapuri, who kind of gives him refuge. And he actually copies his history book from him. So Imam Bukhari had an amazing book. It's not a history book, but it's a book on the records of narrators. It's called a history, the great history, a Tarikh al-Kabir. He has other works as well, but Tarikh al-Kabir is transmitted by this person he stayed with. But did he transmit hadith as well? Think about it. Imam Bukhari's with him. Why not take his Sahih al-Bukhari? But no, he didn't transmit it. Why? Because he was blacklisted. Nobody wanted to take hadith from Imam Bukhari. Imam Bukhari today, who they say Imam Bukhari, in his day and age, they tortured him. And he was called a heretic, a deviant. He was out of Ahlus Sunnah. He was, they called him a hidden kafir. And he just went from town to town. Nobody would give him refuge, and eventually died in just some small town of Nishapur. And he actually prayed to God that kill me, because I can't take this anymore. And he died. And, you know, even today, research shows us that one of the greatest causes of death is loneliness. It is, seriously, it causes a person to shut down and to give up. And that will to live diminishes. And so Imam Bukhari just died, and he made dua that, Ya Allah, you know, he says in his famous dua that لَقَدْ ضَاقَتْ عَلَيَّ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ. You know, that this vast earth of yours has become so narrow and claustrophobic for me, that just take me. And he died. And this is the same, you know, the same attitude of these Mulvis and these Mullahs and these, they're the ones who tortured him to death. Because they called him a deviant, just because he disagreed on an opinion about the Quran. Like he said that we don't call the Quran, you know, he said that of course this book in front of us is created. Oh, book deviant, don't take hadith from him. Tortured him. These same Wahhabi, they're great theological ancestors, the Hanbalis in Aqidah, they're the ones who tortured him. And the Hanafis are the other ones who tortured him. Why the Hanafis hated him is because he had beef, so to speak, with Imam Abu Hanifa. He used to criticize Imam Abu Hanifa, and he would criticize the opinions of the Hanafi madhab. So inside this book, Sahih Bukhari, he was known to have criticized the Hanafi madhab. So they had issue with him and beef with him, and you know, then they circulate nonsense like Imam Sarakhsi writes in his book, oh, the reason we boycotted him is because he said if two people drink milk from the same cow, they become brother and sister. I mean, come on, behave. This is like, you know, this is like, yaar, ye wali tarkib nahi chalegi. You know, like, at least come out with a better kind of I mean, that's like, you know, that's like everybody in the room like hearing this thinking, They're thinking like, for God's sake, you could have at least made up a better lie than that. You know, at least make some, at least let us slightly digest it. Oh, if you drink milk from the same cow, you become brother and sister. I mean, come on, man. Everybody knows he wouldn't have said something stupid. Nobody says things like that. Admi jiye to jiye kaise. This is the thing. They don't let people be, man. They don't let people be. So anyway, that's Imam Bukhari in his day and age. So I have love for Imam Bukhari. I have this book that is transmitted and apparently is allegedly Imam Bukhari's book. I have respect for the book as a whole. But my issue is not with the book. My questions are genuine. Okay. So let me come back to this discussion on Bukhari later, just in a while, when I'll discuss some of these counterclaims. But okay. When we are allowed and not allowed to mix with the opposite gender. Dan Anderson is asking. Kamal Ibrahim is asking on KFC and McDonald's. Much nahi to kuch nahi, that's the thing, hell yeah. So look, opposite gender. Who says you're not allowed to mix with the opposite? What does that mean, mix with the opposite gender? What does that even mean? Like shared space? Having shared space? What, I'm not allowed to be in a room if we're not allowed to have like what, 10 meters squared shared, or what are we? What? This is why, you know, with these kind of people, this is my advice, folks. When these people say these kind of absurd statements, rephrase the question and show them how ridiculous this question is. So when they say you're not allowed to free mix is just a made up word. It's not even an English word. I mean, free mixing means to do with music and the tapes and stuff like this that they free mix. It doesn't mean this like so what they're asking is shared space. So can men and women share space? Now all of a sudden, you see, when you say it out loud, you think, well, it sounded okay in my head actually, but now that I've said it loud, it kind of sounds dumb actually. You're like, then all of a sudden you feel embarrassed, like, wait a minute, sorry, no, that ain't my question. Because what does that mean, like share space? What, like 10 meters squared, 15 meters squared, 5 meters squared? I mean, what kind of space? It's stupid. You know, this, oh, are you allowed to talk to women? Are you allowed to talk to women? No. Of course you're allowed to talk to women, what the hell? In fact, the problem sometimes is not communicating. Although that is another topic in itself, that can men and women ever successfully communicate? That's another topic in itself. Because I do think sometimes men and women can never successfully communicate. That's a different discussion, philosophical discussion. Like nowadays, you can't, I don't know, I think men, I don't know, but a lot of men, I think, like, for example, we can't understand so many emojis. I think we can only understand the obvious emojis, like happy, laughing, angry, you know, stuff like shocked. We can't understand emotions beyond that. Like, is that, what does that mean? This is our handicapped nature as men. We can't understand. So there's miscommunication. Yeah. So that's the, of course there should be communication. You know, so many people get they get married and they haven't successfully communicated. And you know, in some cases that's fine. Like, people get to kind of, you know, they're okay. And in some cases it's a tragic shock, because they realize that, what the hell, they completely can't get on with the other person. They completely find the other person very different, personalities totally don't match. They and then people would ask that, you know, did you not communicate before you got married? Did you not wouldn't you speak to each other? Well, so this is just a huge problem, people. So communication is key. That's what I would say. Second gaze is haram, I heard. What is this second gaze, third gaze? What is this? What is this kind of nonsense that people go on about? Look, keep it natural. That's what I say. Just keep it natural. This is the problem. We want to micromanage everything. We want to micromanage everything. Oh, you're allowed to look once but not twice. Oh, I blinked. Uh-oh. Is the blink part of the first look or is it part of the second look? What is this? We've turned the deen into a joke. What is this kind of stuff? You're not allowed to... look, there's a hadith of the Prophet, since they want a hadith, where the Prophet is with his cousin, who's staring at the woman that he finds attractive, and he's even mentions he's going like this. Sa'ad an-nazar, he's like mesmerized by her beauty, as often people are. But the thing is, so he's sitting with the Prophet, and he's doing that, and the Prophet simply just kind of turns his face because and loads of people are noticing this, by the way. So the Prophet is just kind of telling him that, look, it just, so, and he's looking again, and the Prophet's kind of like telling him, and he's looking again, and then he says to the Prophet, did I do something wrong? And the Prophet says, it's not that, it's just that I just thought that things were getting a bit out of hand, that's all. So, look, why didn't the Prophet say, astaghfirullah, the moment you looked after 0.2 seconds, it became haram? There wasn't nothing like that. So, yeah, so exactly. So we kind of turn the deen into something robotic, and then we kind of complain that why is it the way it is? And then all these, we've got issues, and yeah, so anyway, right, what else? What's going down? Why has Allah made the Quran so unclear? This is an interesting question. I've lost it. No, here it is. While he had people reading horrible things into it, why is it more clear so that ISIS and other psychopaths had no chance? Marius. What a mystic name, huh? Marius. What kind of I wonder what language that. Why is the Quran considered divine revelation? Aren't we commanded to lower the gaze? Okay, let me just finish up on lowering the gaze. I don't mean by that G-A-Y-S as in lowering the homosexuals. Just in case somebody's like, okay, I've lowered the gay. The two gays, I've lowered them. Right, so we have some miscommunication. So I don't want people to be having any miscommunication. So, lowering the gaze, yes, because look, the Quran is speaking about harm. When you're kind of like ogling away and you're making people uncomfortable. This is what the Quran would have been addressing. That don't do that. Because it makes people very uncomfortable, and you are causing, even if it's on the low end of the spectrum, but you're causing harm to people. So that would have been the understanding. And if a person felt that they're going to, by looking, do something, people need to chill out as well a bit. People are like, oh my God, if somebody looks, then they'll have to do something. This is why Qadi Iyad said that no, the responsibility is on each individual themselves. So this is there is a difference between, like ogling and kind of like staring down somebody, and between obviously looking or meditating, as some call it. That's a joke. Anyway, right, so what's the other question? What were we talking about? Yeah, harassment is obviously forbidden. So that's true. So that's what the verse of the Quran would have been speaking about. Yeah, so Muttaqi Khan's got it. It's the desi gaze. You know, I know what I'll do. I want to attract that girl. This is the kind of desi way of seducing a girl. I'll just sit here and stare at her like this. Until she's absolutely petrified. Anyway, let's move on. Right, the other question somebody asked, why is the Quran sometimes not so clear? Why don't you like Hizb Ut Tahrir? The same way I don't like bacteria and viruses. Hizb Ut Tahrir, I'm going to come on to them in a moment. This Abdullah, I'll come on to them. They are an extreme, they are a cancer in this ummah. But anyway, I'll come to that. This thing about the Quran, it is true that the Quran is not sometimes so clear. And that is something that, that's a kind of fair objection that people can have against, I suppose, revelation and against Muslims, if we're going to be fair. But I think that maybe the reason behind that is that sometimes, in order for something to grow and develop, it needs malleability. It needs that kind of an element, an X factor of plasticity. And that comes with some ambiguity, sometimes something's not being clear. And I know this is then a double-sided blade, because it can count against. It's a bit like evolution. You see, the kind of cells need to be able to malreproduce. There needs to be kind of the ability for malreproduction and mutation in order for it to allow them to evolve. Like if cells could not reproduce in including a kind of mutated way as well, then they couldn't evolve. So it was the need of evolution that, as a consequence, you would have things like cancer. Do you understand? Although there are carcinogenic kind of elements too, but what I'm trying to say is the malreproduction of cells is also necessary for evolution. So sometimes some kind of ambiguity is necessary. That's my understanding. But I do concede, I accept. I'm not one of these people that tries to shy away from things or tries to lie or cover up. It is true that the Quran, the language it uses at times, at sometimes, it is a minority of occasions, but sometimes it uses language to allow certain things to go on, even though at a deeper level, that's not. So let me give you an example. Let's take Christianity as an example. Now, the Quran, whenever it addressed Jesus Christ, alayhi salam, it seems to address him with words, not whenever, but at times throughout the Quran, on at least 4 occasions throughout the Quran, it seems to refer to him in ambiguous words that the Christians really only related to. And we as Muslims today don't accept Jesus Christ like that. So it seems to refer to him as the Word of God, Logos, which in the Christian thing is, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God. You see, so, and in the Quran it refers to Jesus, وَكَلِمَةٌ أَلْقَاهَا إِلَى مَرْيَمَ وَكَلِمَةٌ مِّنْهُ, and the Word from God. Now, it doesn't refer, this wording is not used for any other prophet or anybody, only for Jesus Christ. Now, it's interesting that the Quran did that, because in essence, that is a very kind of Christian narrative. Like, we as Muslims don't actually believe that. Another thing interesting about Jesus Christ, alayhi salam, is whenever the Quran mentions him, in certain, not whenever, but in certain verses, it mentions the Holy Spirit, wa-ruh al-Qudus. But it doesn't mention the Ruh al-Qudus really for anybody else. Like, in one verse, there is only one other verse where Allah says, that the Quran has been brought down, وَنَزَّلَهُ الرُّوحُ الْقُدُسِ, that the Ruh al-Qudus has brought it down. But beyond that verse, it's not used for anybody except Jesus on at least 3 or I think 4 other occasions. It mentions that وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ, and we strengthened him with the Holy Spirit. What is that talking about? Because why is it using words which we as Muslims don't actually use? It's actually leaning in on a Christian narrative. So it's interesting, the Quran does do this, because the Quran was revealed over a lengthy period of time, and it was allowed to create bridges between certain people that could then, in their way, maybe connect. Because maybe, in essence, the Quran wasn't about creed. It wasn't about this kind of dogma that we as Muslims later on turned Islam into creed. Like, there's 165 points which you must believe. If you don't believe these points, you are a kafir. This didn't exist in early Islam. And it was more just about the faith. Okay. Now, so it is true that, yes, there's certain things in the Quran that sometimes it uses language that can be interpreted in different ways. People can... Another thing to remember as well, the Quran primarily came for the people it was revealed to. It did not primarily come for us. It came for us, but by extension. So the Quran came... Somebody's asked a question there, Radar Khan. I don't understand the question though. What's the point of the Holy Spirit? I don't understand the question. I don't think there is a point to it in that sense. Yes, the Quran does mention with Jesus the Holy Spirit. On more than one occasion it mentions the Holy Spirit helped Jesus. He reinforced Jesus and things like this. But what does that mean for us as Muslims? It doesn't mean much. Maybe for Christians it meant a lot more. So this is my point. So what I'm trying to say is the Quran sometimes, maybe it was bigger than just us. And we are so egocentric that we think it's all about us, if you understand. I mean, I have a view as well, although, and that is, I don't know whether that would come much into this question, but that is that this term Milla in Islam, the Quran mentions we are upon the Milla of Ibrahim. I have an understanding that maybe the Milla of earlier grand prophets varied. So it's not, and I don't mean by that the way of practice varied, because that Allah clearly says all of the prophets, their practices varied, their laws varied. I don't mean that, but maybe their Millah meant the entire discourse of religion, the way you look at religion as a whole may have varied. And maybe we are upon the one of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And that's an interesting thought then. So maybe certain, because you see in certain religions, maybe there wasn't a stress on things like on the afterlife, for example. And maybe that was their millah. It was a different millah. I mean, these are just some thoughts that I have sometimes. Well, anyway, let's get back to the problem is Trinity in Christian religion. No, he doesn't, Halima. What's this? What's going on? What's going on? Let me see some. Is there any trolling going on so I can block some trolls? can't see any trolls. What are your thoughts on quantum entanglement? I find quantum mechanics Suleiman Tajuddin is asking, yep, that is my right hand anyway, for God's sake. Grow up, people. The camera is reversed. Anyway, right, so the quantum entanglement, I think, is amazing. I think quantum physics is amazing, honestly. Mind-blowing. It's and I really feel that, you see, my understanding is maybe consciousness is something, I definitely think consciousness, we access consciousness through the brain. I definitely feel that is definitely correct. But I think, what if we access it at a quantum level? And what if consciousness is something that is more out there and we have the ability to tap into it? And what if there's like a sea of consciousness and a collective consciousness? So these are things that I feel. And what if consciousness is the ruh? So these are, you know, and hence Allah blew, he says, and from his consciousness he blew, from his ruh, he blew that. وَمِن رُوحِنَا, Allah says, we blew from our ruh into Adam. What if this, and I think about entanglement, I really think, you know, with basically two subatomic particles like electrons, or you could get other, you know, atomic particles as well, what they can do is become entangled. Now, the thing about this is, once beamed together, like, however, for whatever reason they get entangled, no matter how far they are, if one is altered or moved, the other one automatically moves. And part of this is also part of, I mean, I know China recently conducted several experiments underwater as well, incredibly successful, and things like this with quantum entanglement. I've always thought, what if there is, like, I was reading once about something, like it was a theory about what if there are biophotons that are emitted, because photons are like massless particles, by the brain, because the brain has electrical kind of surges and it operates electrically, as well as kind of with, you know, fluids as well. But what if that, if two people have a connection, a powerful connection, and then maybe through the eyes, what if biophotons were to become entangled? What about that, people? Hence, no matter how far people are, sometimes they have that bond and connection. That's an it's just a theory that I was, you know, because I was thinking about this once and I came across certain kind of theories about it, and I thought that sounds so, because it is, I think, sometimes very interesting how people have that bond, how they can be thinking and other people can be thinking of them in turn, or it's almost like a very low-key kind of telepathy, but not like full-on communication, but just subtle. So that's some food for thought. Right, so what, wouldn't that be rather Eastern though, thought? I'm not sure what that means. Right, okay, so what are some questions? Right, so on that note, I'd seen some articles about jinn possession, people. Somebody's asking, why is the Quran divine scripture? You see, that's a faith element. We as Muslims believe the Quran is divine. As far as empirical, all we can simply say is that it comes from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, for us as Muslims, we believe that that was revealed unto him from God. That part we can't prove. And non-Muslims wouldn't really accept that part. They may accept that, yes, it came from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they won't accept the rest, that it came from God. For us as Muslims, we would say that we believe it came from God. There's no harm. Look, they don't have to believe it came from God, and we don't need to be insecure. We don't need to be insecure. People faith is a journey. Okay, I tell a lot of people this, that faith is a journey. Just embrace it. It's not, we're not here to say we have, I have empirical proof that this is this or this is, no. The faith is a journey, and that's why it's called faith. And it's okay, but it's not counter reason either. So there's a difference in some people who feel it's counter reason. So all these great prophets had these visions and understandings in fact, that book that I went through is a very good book, The History of Religion by Holloway, Professor Holloway. Now, it's amazing how in the beginning he speaks about those people of enlightenment, these prophets, and like Moses and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and other prophets as well. You see, to other people, that they acknowledge that definitely these people had some amazing inspiration, because they had something that changed the world. And you don't have to believe in the Prophet Moses, you don't have to believe in Jesus Christ, you don't have to believe in the Prophet Muhammad, and peace and blessings be upon all of them. You don't have to believe in them, but the truth is they changed the world. And now, so people do recognize that they had some kind of inspiration, some vision, some intuition, but to us, we would accept that was revelation. They said it was revelation. Those people themselves said that this was the voice of God that spoke to them. Now, to other people who don't believe in that, they would acknowledge that it was some inspiration and intuition, but they just won't acknowledge that it was the voice of God. Right, so Yasin Alif Lam says, can't people really be enticed to one certain faith? Your dawah skills are not on point. Wow, that's what you call criticism, people. Constructive criticism. I like it. I like it. This one's to you, man. This one's to you. Your dawah skills are not on point. Anyway, is that what I'm doing here? Dawah. Okay, so what do you say about Wahdat al-Wujud? Wahdat. Ud is Wahdat. Oh, Wahdat al-Wujud. Oh, Wahdat al-Wujud. I thought you're speaking patois. I thought we got our Jamaican, Caribbean brethren on the line there speaking about Wahdat al-Wujud. But this is Wahdat al-Wujud. Okay. Wahdat al-Wujud is about the essence of everything is in essence God. And I mean, it's not the general understanding within Muslim theology, although it exists. Some people have it, like Sheikh, what's his name, Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, and other Sufis have generally had. See, what's interesting is, what if that was part of another Milla? That's what I meant. Because it's interesting, because at essence what they're saying, at a philosophical level, you understand it. That they're trying to say, well, really, everything only exists because of God. So that's interesting. So I think, like, what if that is from another Milla? What if another Milla had that as their main understanding? These are questions, people, questions. I just put them out there. And what I get in return is people refuting me with these PDFs and saying, Zindiq, Kafir, Murtad. Right, so Yusuf said he left the Millah of a people, but Yusuf would have been the Millah of Ibrahim, because Yusuf is from the Israelites. So what's the best argument in your opinion that proves Islam is objectively true? You see, Islam is a faith. It's not about being able to, I don't know if you can objectively, I believe Islam stands the test of reason. So But it is a faith. It's difficult. I would say, look, when you say prove it to be objectively true, I don't believe you can empirically prove it. Like the way I can prove this book to be here, you can't prove Islam like that. It's a faith, in my understanding. It provides meaning to people, you know. It provides... But then, as I said last week or the week before, it's like all of our social constructs. How can you prove them to be true? How can you prove money to be true? What makes you think money actually doesn't exist? I mean, it's what makes you think the concept of possession? What makes you think the concept of human rights is true? What makes you think the concept of nationality exists, or of states, or of rulership, or of relationships, or of the institutions like marriage? I mean, none of these things actually exist. Race does not exist. Laws, in essence, okay, people could argue, they could say, you know, but these are just stories that we made up. These are all discourse. This is all just discourse analysis. It's just all stories human beings have spun. None of them actually exist objectively. None of these things exist. I mean, you might think they exist, but they don't. Ownership does not exist. Like for me to say, this phone is mine, it's just a story. How can you prove that? I mean, you could say you prove it because I've got it in my hand, or because a receipt says that's mine, but how do you prove possession with a capital P? How do you prove that just by having something? What do you mean that's yours? Yours is something that is only attached to you. Like, how does... You know, so these are stories that we have spun as human beings. None of them can be objectively proven. They all exist in this amazing thing called the mind. But they provide meaning for us. And we believe them to be true. And religion is one of those things that we believe to be true. So, I mean, it provides people solace, it gets people through this life, and it gives them an understanding of how they came here and where they're going. You can't objectively prove any of these things. Right. Somebody saying, Bakhto vae. All right. Aukana. Right. So even your children are not yours. And that was my argument to the courts. To the judge. Even my children. To the CSA, Child Support Agency. No, children can be proven to be yours. It's called DNA. I tried that one, it doesn't work. No, don't try that one. It's not going to work. The judge is just going to go, Anyway, right, so children can be proven to be yours. That's something scientific, but I meant the constructs, social constructs. Do you believe in the evil eye? No, I don't. The evil eye is just nonsense. It's just superstition that Muslims, unfortunately, not just Muslims, many people have it, Christian, medieval, basically it existed in the medieval times that everybody used to believe in an evil eye. It doesn't matter what religion you're from, you didn't have to be Muslim, you could have been Christian, Hindu, anything. They believed in the evil eye. You know, I look at you and the evil eye. It's nonsense. There's no such thing, right? So the hadith are regarding the evil eye are either non-existent, weak, fabricated, or those that do exist and are barely acceptable. Those are simply speaking of envy and acting out on envy. So envy in itself doesn't cause harm, but what causes harm is when you act out on envy. So that's what the evil eye meant. It meant when people act out on this kind of jealousy. And jealousy, but people could say, well, you know, but jealousy already exists in the Arabic language. It does, but there's different types of jealousies. Because there's one type of jealousy that, you know, you don't want the other person to, I don't want nobody to have this. And then there's kind of subtle subconscious. Like you could be envious of something. Maybe it's not that you don't want the other person to have it, but maybe you want it as well. And maybe it's at a subconscious level and it influences your behavior towards that person, and therefore you harm that person. And this is known throughout life. People have harmed people, you know, that are that you see that they. So a typical example will be like, let's say you see in several stories, several cultures, like a beautiful girl or a beautiful woman is harmed then, and that doesn't make much sense, because why would people harm her? But it's almost like they have that kind of this kind of like, there is this envy and insecurity, and these sometimes are things operating at a subconscious level as well, that people feel inept in front of other people, and therefore they try to harm them, or cause harm or sabotage sometimes. So I think that's what in those hadith that are acceptable, that spoke of the evil eye, it was referring to. It wasn't referring to an actual, like an evil, you know, like you shoot out laser rays and cause harm. That kind of stuff is nonsense. So yes, right, I was going to speak about jinn possession. Are you the 21st century Mufti? Ralphai Hussein. Mufti is, I think, what you want to say. Let me correct you. And that's Mufti G to you. Right, so I saw this, a few Facebook posts and some videos speaking about jinn possession. And people, look, let me tell you, I have a whole video on jinn possession. It's on YouTube. Demonic possessions do not exist, people. Okay, there are no such thing as demonic possessions. This is nothing but just folklore, just kind of stories, superstition that unfortunately huge parts of the Muslim world are just plagued with. It's just a medieval understanding. It's nothing. There is nothing. The Quran is actually against these kind of beliefs, if anything. The Quran clearly condemns any such kind of nonsensical belief. It even tells you that the devil himself, you know, the devil himself, Shaitan, has no power over you. It tells you that even the Shaitan is to state on the Day of Judgment. In Surah Ibrahim it mentions that he will say, "Ma kana li alaykum min sultan." I had no power over you. It was your choice. Yet we feel that these little demons kind of possess people, ruin their lives, make them kill people, ruin relationships, make them cause harm, and are the death of people. Nonsense. Utter nonsense. And there isn't a single Sahih Sarih Hadith in our literature. Every single Hadith is weak. And yet people believe in this stuff. So this is the kind of nonsense that we are dealing with. And let me tell you something, guys. You know, sometimes some people have asked me, what about some interesting cases that have been inexplicable? And first of all, I would ask them that see, when you say jinn possession, demonic possession, is the belief for this rational or textual? Have you arrived at this through reason, or have you arrived at this because you believe that Islamic sources have taught you this? Because there are no sources that teach this, and in fact the teaching is counter demonic possession. If you then say that, well, no, I believe in this because through my rationally, well, rationally it's a flawed argument. That, you know, there's these kind of beings that come into people, and it makes no sense. Because if you read the arguments that these people have written in the past, and people like, you know, scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah have really destroyed lives. You know, may Allah forgive him and have mercy on him with his book on, because the problem, once again, it's not Ibn Taymiyyah per se, it's just people have taken him to be a demigod almost. You know, they think Ibn Taymiyyah was like the prophet himself. So anything he said, it had to have been, you know, divine. And so Ibn Taymiyyah wrote a book about, oh, that jinn can possess people. and people bounce up and down in glory that, oh yes, because Ibn Taymiyyah said it. Of course he was going to say, he lived 600-700 years ago. Of course, what do you expect him to say? You know, like, and he wrote a book, and you should read his book, by the way. He says that they can become anything. They can become a piece of, like, this book could be a jinn now. He says they could take the they can become inanimate objects, they can become objects, they can become humans, they can be... What on earth is this nonsense? You know, and if you're a jinn, what do you want to do? You want to cause harm? If I want to cause harm to somebody, then wouldn't I cause harm? Like, oh, they want to cause harm to Islam. Then why not just become a page in the Quran? Why not? Why not become this TV screen? Why not? Why not become the Quran? Why not become Hadith? How do you know that Ibn Taymiyyah actually wrote that book, and how do you know that that book isn't just a jinn? You see, because if I was a jinn, what I would want people to do is believe that I've got these powers, and if I can become a book, as Ibn Taymiyyah wrote, how do you know that wasn't the jinn that just pretended to become a book and said, I'm authored by Ibn Taymiyyah? How do you know Ibn Taymiyyah wasn't a jinn? How do you know anything? How do you know? And then they're going to say, well, that's absurd. Why is it absurd? Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Ain't we talking about demonic possessions? So the whole dialogue is absurd. Acha. So when you speak, when I give examples, they're absurd. But it's true though. What makes you think, well, anything is true then? I could be a jinn. We could all be jinns. As I've said before, if I was a jinn and I wanted to create mass mischief on earth, become a terrorist. So really, or possess these people and turn them into terrorists. So really, ISIS are not to blame. They're just demons that have possessed people. See, like this kind of nonsense, where it gets to. It's all stupid and nothing. And I'll tell you this, there's something very interesting. In fact, there's a movie I was watching. It's called Brain on Fire. It's a very interesting movie on Netflix. Hashtag Netflix and chill. There's an interesting movie on Netflix called, and it's a book. It's based on a true life events of this girl who had a lot going for her in life, and then all of a sudden she becomes quite debilitated, and she starts getting these seizures, and then it goes from bad to worse, and it becomes quite crippling over time. But and this is recent. I mean, this is like a fresh story. It's only, you know, several years old. It's not that long ago. So they ran in America the latest tests on her. They did MRI scans. They checked, you know, with electroencephalogram antibodies. She came negative for all kinds of infections. She was negative. There was no kind of infections. Her body results were absolutely of a healthy human. She showed no kind of diseases. She showed no autoimmune kind of attack. She showed no lack of vitamins or anything. Nothing. They ran the works on her. Nothing. And she became more and more debilitated. And then she would hear voices. She would have psychotic attacks. No history of any disease. They checked for the rarest of disorders. Nothing. You know, Lyme disease, this, that, nothing. First, they just kept saying, oh, she's just acting out. She may have been taking drugs. Nothing. No, they couldn't figure her out. And it's interesting, this is based on a true life event, that they just eventually wanted to say that she had schizophrenia. They didn't know what to say. They just said that, honestly, we do not know what's wrong with her. Now, you see, and she started to act weird and act all kind of like her limbs started to kind of cripple, and she started to lose function. And now, exactly, and to kind of have these fits, and exactly like demonic possessions. And you know, the interesting thing is a Muslim doctor by the name of Dr. Najjar actually eventually was called in to kind of, as a favor, to kind of diagnose her. And he did his research, and he felt that, and he had to kind of do like a brain biopsy, and then he figured out that what was actually going on was an there was a anti-NMDA receptors in the brain she had an anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis that was going on. And this, like basically these NMDA kind of receptors in the brain, they receive, they kind of react to things like glutamate and these other kind of neurotransmitters. And they were becoming inflamed. The autoimmune system was attacking them. But it wouldn't show up in any, and these kind of receptors are key for things like memory and function and synaptic plasticity. So her brain was literally on fire, but it wouldn't pick up. The MRI and these things would not pick it up. So to them, she was absolutely normal and they could not figure it out. So with the help of this Dr. Najd, he actually kind of diagnosed this and then went on. This is only, I think, 2015. And since then, hundreds of people, if not thousands, have been helped with this diagnosis. So, and what's interesting is at the end of this book and this movie, they say that many people historically, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, have been either diagnosed for demonic possessions or schizophrenia, perhaps wrongly, because of not knowing that these receptors, were kind of inflamed and stuff like this in the brain. So what I'm trying to say is, just because we don't understand something, it's not demons. Like even, and this was the greatest, some of the greatest doctors and hospitals in America saying that, look, we don't know what's wrong with her. But yet, they did figure it out eventually. I mean, they could have just given up. And I actually felt proud that, alhamdulillah, I was a Muslim who could have just said, oh, it's a jinn. Thank God he didn't believe in jinn possession. And he figured, and she was cured. They cured her. Alhamdulillah, and she was getting incredibly debilitated. But yeah, so I thought I'd mention that. Right, people, let's go on to some of these... Right, Bukhari. I put out a challenge to some of these right, anybody interested in my detailed jinn video, you can watch it. It's on YouTube. I go through all these cases, and it was actually a joint course that I delivered with Sheikh Akram Nadwi. And it was amazing because likewise Sheikh Akram Nadwi had said, look, this is all nonsense. Jinn possession and magic and all this kind of stuff is nonsense. So we actually have a joint course on that. Right, now, some people have highlighted Sheikh Akram Nadwi's article. Now, first of all, on Sahih Bukhari, I'd like to address this. Now, it's not Sheikh Akram Nadwi I'd like to address, but just some of these points. I want to mention that I had a while back put out a kind of challenge to the Wahhabi, or they call themselves Sunni defense. They are in essence the Wahhabi defense. Very disrespectful people to the Prophet. Openly I'd shown how they openly portray and teach that our Prophet was sexually impotent, and they say this with almost a sense of pride. Disgusting, shocking people. But anyway, and by the way, they are then glorified by the likes of the Hanafi channel, which is run by, mashallah, our part amongst them, our Anthony Gonzalez, our Mulvi Makari, what's his name, Yasir al-Hanafi al-Gonzalez. He is part of that channel, and they obviously, if anybody's going to speak against me, it doesn't matter the people that call our Prophet sexually impotent and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. But as long as they're speaking against Mufti Abu Layth, then they have become Shaykhul Islam. Even if a dog barks against me, that dog would receive Shaykhul Islam status momentarily, as long as it's against me. But yeah, so these people kind of try to, as well, these Wahhabis and their dirty tactics of basically trying to pit Sheikh Akram Nadwi against me. Just like, oh, Sheikh Akram, they don't call him Sheikh because, by the way, they don't respect him. Akram Nadwi, they call him, like, because they obviously have nothing but contempt as well for people like that. And they're trying to pit him against me, as in trying to say, well, oh, look, he's destroying Abu Layth. Look, first of all, I don't get drawn into your kind of stupid, pathetic medieval politics. I have nothing but much love and respect for Sheikh Akram Nadwi. To me, Sheikh Akram Nadwi Saab is amongst the seniority within the UK. I've always said that there are a few people who I would appoint, as that kind of seniority. Amongst them, Sheikh Akram Nadwi, people like Sheikh Babikar al-Sudani, people like in Birmingham, Sheikh Sarfaraz Madani Saab. These kind of people are senior people who have a kind of wisdom to them. And I always admire that about them, and I see them as my seniority. I see them as a very respectful, and there's others as well, but I just gave some names as examples. And to me, it doesn't mean that I have to agree with them. People like Sheikh Sidi Iqbal from Birmingham as well, and people like this, I see these people as a kind of seniority who I have a great admiration, a great love, and I would never, you see, these people, they could say anything. First of all, Sheikh Akram Nadwi did not say anything about me personally, but even if he did, which he didn't, because that's not he's somebody who, even when they tried to pit him against me in the whole Jesus second coming debate, amazing person. He himself just phoned me and we had a conversation. But still, even people like that have the right to say things to me. They could come and ek do thappar laga, they could give me a slap or two and I'd still not say anything. These people are out of that kind of respect and seniority that I have for them. But it doesn't mean I have to agree with them. And they wouldn't want me to agree with them. They wouldn't want me to be a clone or just a kind of like a groupie. They wouldn't want that. They would want me to, it's like Sheikh Akram Nadwi himself said, look, put out the research. So, and I have the right to test the evidence. So this article that people are saying, it hasn't answered my questions. It wasn't the only article. By the way, there were other responses as well that people had made. So my Facebook post that I made problematizing the authenticity of Bukhari was actually a response to multiple articles, amongst them what had been highlighted in Sheikh Akram Nadwi's post as well. So I actually had responded to all of these already, but people didn't know that. They thought that this was actually a response to me. My post was actually a response to a collective set of articles, amongst them that as well. And this is something out of respect. You can test the evidence, and this is not something I wouldn't be interested in having a personal kind of that thing against Sheikh Akram Nadwi or whatever, because of my love for him. But as to my stance on this issue, I'll address the stance and I'll address what people have tried to bring up here. And that's fine. And look, the challenge still remains there. And this article and other people have said that, look, they themselves have admitted we have not dealt with the problems yet. But in the future, we will release articles that deal with these problems. And I look forward to that because I look forward to learning. Like I said before, I have no personal problem with Sahih Bukhari or Imam Bukhari. Imam Bukhari I have zero problem with. I love Imam Bukhari. But the book today, Sahih Bukhari, I have no problem with it. But let's be genuine. If we were going to look at any other religion, would we not question these things? Then why the double standards? Why is it there's one set of rules for us and a different set of rules for other people? When we look at the Gospels, we problematize everything. But the Gospel of Mark was 70 years at least after, it was, or not even 70 really, but it was written, 70 CE, approximately, give or take. Now, that's still decades after Jesus Christ. How do we know who wrote? How do we know about the filtering? How do we know about where it's being doctored or moved about? Like, we become highly critical when it comes to other faiths. Yet when it's our own faith, we have this romanticized view that everything is so brilliant and amazing. Look, let's be legit, let's be genuine. And I've asked these people, look, prove the authenticity of Sahih Bukhari to me, that going back to the Imam. Because look, from Imam Bukhari to the Prophet, there's been all these works, but what people haven't addressed is from Bukhari to us. And I've highlighted this time and time again. That look, first of all, let's begin with how is Imam Bukhari's book transmitted to us? So some people have said things like, look, first of all, they've said, everybody has known that Imam Bukhari had a book. I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing that Imam Bukhari had a book. Imam Bukhari had a book called Sahih al-Bukhari. I mean, it's a lengthy name for it, but let's just for now call it al-Jami' al-Sahih, the Sahih collection of Imam Bukhari. Now, the question is this that book? Or has it been kind of changed to some extent? Are we saying that it is 100% the same book? And I think every single person knows in their heart it is not 100% the same book. I think you'd have to, if you said that, you are either ignorant or you're just lying, or you don't know. Like, either you're ignorant and don't know the research, or if you do know the research, you're just kind of giving yourself dilasa there, eh? You know, it's like, don't worry. You know, it's like Ghalib said that मैं जानता हूँ जन्नत की हकीकत गालिब, that I know the reality of Jannah Ghalib, पर दिल, what is it? पर दिल को बहलाने का ख्याल अच्छा है. But you know, it's good to kind of keep the to kind of keep some peace in the heart. The point is that look, let's be, like I'm saying, let's be genuine here. We all will accept that there is some doubt. Now the question is, how far does this margin of error stretch? That is the question. So I'm going to look at some of these things that people have been sharing. So one thing people have said is, of course, Bukhari legitimately comes to us. One point to start off with is, who does it come through? The first source that it comes through. And that is Muhammad ibn Yusuf al-Farabri. Farabri, yaar. It can be read Farabri as well, but I tend to say Farabri, but whatever. Farabri. यार ये February का मसला रहा है. Hi, Farabri. You see, Farabri is a problem. Why is Farabri a problem, you ask me? Because look, the first problem is that Imam Bukhari in his final years became blacklisted, as I mentioned. He was called a deviant, he was called a heretic, and he was outcasted by the Muslims. He was chucked out of he was refused access in all the major cities, and he just suffered and then died like that for the last few years of his life. Now, nobody was taking hadith from him in the last few years. Now the question is, that does add an element of complexity, because even all the great muhaddithin students of his, like Tirmidhi and Imam Muslim, and all these great imams of his day, they don't transmit his book. They don't transmit it. One could say, yeah, well, they had their own book. Okay, but they could have transmitted his as well. You know, but no. Okay, so that's the first. So he had several students, by the way, Imam Bukhari. Imam Farabri himself says, this is Imam Farabri. By the way, some people believe that I'm calling him Imam. He wasn't an Imam like that, but Farabri, some people believe Farabri made up the character Bukhari. I don't believe that, but some people have said things like that. They said he made him up and everything just to serve his own kind of thing, but I think that's overdoing it. But Farabri himself says that Imam Bukhari had thousands and thousands and thousands of people taking Sahih Bukhari from him. He says he had 90,000 Bloody hell, 90,000 people transmitting Bukhari. And then Farabri says, by the way, nobody is alive today still transmitting it except me. Which is such a blag. I mean, this is that. You see, now the problem is people who make statements like that, how seriously can we take people like that? Because, wait a minute, how reliable are you now? Because if you're saying things like that, then we've got a problem to start off with. Because that is clearly a statement just to self-aggrandize yourself. Like, it's basically to say, you are the master today. You're the Don. And that's a problem, because now there's a lot of... it's become like there's ulterior motives involved. So, okay, first problem. Second problem is Farabri himself, his own students like Abu Ishaq al-Mustamli and other students say that his book, part of it was incomplete. His own book was incomplete. That his book, he says Farabri used to have a book which he claimed was from Bukhari. Like, not from as in he'd heard it from Bukhari. Now the question is, they say Farabri's book was, part of it was a musawwada, was incomplete. His own students are saying not only was it incomplete, we used to move it around. We used to add chapter headings, and we used to make variations to it, we the students. Second problem. Because look, let's be honest. Some of his key students of Farabri were not scholars of Hadith. Like who, you say? Like Abu Haytham al-Kushmayhani, one of the key transmitters of Farabri today. He was not even a scholar. He didn't even know Hadith. He was criticized by so many people. Even people who took from him later on regretted taking from him. Like even one of the great copies that we have today of Abu Dharr al Harawi, who took from 3 people and patched it together, says, I used to go back and try to remove what Kushmayhani had said because he wasn't an alim of Hadith. So, okay, now you've got people making additions and making kind of like editing who are not even clued up on Hadith. So, okay, and let's face it, human beings make mistakes. That is just true, especially if you're not an expert. So now all of this is going on. Farabri's copy is the only copy that really goes out throughout the world. And is the only copy that has reached everyone with a connected chain through Sama. Even Ibn Hajar later on says it is the only one that reaches us bis Sama, that we have heard. The other, we might get parts and manuscripts of others which are not through Sama, so they're not truly connected. Okay, this is a problem. Now the mother of all problems. Farabri himself is unvouched for in Hadith. Nobody's vouched for him. Like, you see, you can't be a transmitter of Hadith. Are you even a reliable transmitter? And nobody says, and look, who was alive in his time? Tirmidhi, Imam Muslim, Abu Dawud, you've got An-Nasa'i, you've got... Okay, you might say these people are contemporaries and they're not going to vouch for him. People like Abu Zur'a, Abu Hatim al-Razi. What about people junior to him? What about Ibn Abi Hatim al-Razi? What about, Ibn Khuzaymah? What about Dar Qutni that comes afterwards? Bayhaqi that comes afterwards? What about all these people who speak on reliable transmitters of Hadith? Why are none of them vouching for Farabri? None. And people say, look, his own, one of the people who took Hadith from him was a reliable scholar of great, like a legend of Hadith, like Ibn Sakan al-Bazzaz, who was a great scholar of Hadith. But even he, does he vouch for him? They say Nasa'i took it from Farabri. Does Nasa'i vouch for him? The first person to vouch for Farabri as reliable was 200 years after him. I mean, come on, behave. Would we accept that for Christian sources? So would we say, right, would we say that, oh yeah, but look, it's okay. You're asking whether the Gospel of Mark is reliable. Believe me, 200 years later, or in the Sea of Nicaea, they all declared it to be authentic. They said it's authentic. Would we accept that? We won't. So let's just be honest. We've got a problem. Then we've got a problem that all of these narrations that come from Farabri, they all vary. They all vary. And there's not just small, this is another thing where we're not being honest. See, this is the problem. We don't be honest. That people say, oh, they only change the chapter headings. That's no big deal, yaar. They change the chapter headings. First of all, for years they've been banging on about fiqh al-Bukhari fi tarajumihi, fiqh al-Bukhari fi tarajumihi. The fiqh of Imam Bukhari is in his chapter headings. Yaar, that's gone. Tarajum to tel lene. That's gone out the window. So okay, so the tarajum, the chapter headings are now we all admit that the chapter headings, a lot of them were made up. So okay, so put that aside. But that's not true. Let's be honest. Many of them disagree in their wordings. They have hadith missing. Not even just hadith missing. Where they have the same hadith, they have chains that are changed. So they've got different names. You've got a scholar, 8th century, Hanbali scholar, Ibn Abdul Hadi. He has a book, The Variations of the Students of Farabri in their riwayat. Yes, there are chapter headings. Yes, there are title headings. Yes, there are small variations. But then there are entire chains that are changed. The name here is different. The name there is different. And they say, yeah, but he made a mistake. So there were mistakes. Say, yeah, he made a mistake, but we're going with that guy's narration. But what's to say they never made him? What's to say Farabri never made a mistake? What's to say? Could Farabri not make a mistake? Farabri was human too. He wasn't even vouched for as a reliable scholar of hadith. What if he made some mistakes? And then when you come down, like Abu Dharr al Harawi, who today we have hundreds of manuscripts based on him, Abu Dharr al Harawi does not have a single transmission. He does a patchwork. You see, when you patch things together, it's not the same thing. Like if I say now, it's like, look, like imagine I said, like imagine some person said, like let's say some person said, I saw Mufti, I don't know, let's say somebody said, I saw Mufti wearing a black coat, walking down the road. And now somebody else added, in New York. And then somebody else added that he looked depressed, let's say. No, somebody, like, so there's variations. And one person said, I saw him wearing this coat. Another person said, walking down the road. Another person said, I saw him in New York. Another person said, he looked depressed. Now, when you start patching things together, like let's say two of them said one thing, that two of them happened to mention I was in New York. Now, one person said, no, actually he was in London. Now, you might say, well, I'm going to go with the New York variation. And then three of them said he was wearing a black coat, and one of them said he was wearing a yellow coat. You say, well, I'm going to go with the black coat. See, the problem here is, and then you're going to say, well, only one of them said he was depressed. Another person said he was happy. I'm going to go with he was happy. So I end up with a story of like, I patch them together. That, oh, he was wearing a black coat, happy, laughing in New York. But the truth is they could have got that wrong. Because not one of them said it in that way. Like you just patched together different things and resulted in a kind of narration. It's like the Hanafis when they hold their hands in prayer. So look, there's some hadith that say the Prophet put his hand on his hand. There's some hadith that say the Prophet put his hand on his forearm. There's some hadith that say the Prophet gripped his wrist. So what the Hanafis do is they say we're going to patch it together. So the Hanafis say we're going to put it on the hand and on the forearm and grip the wrist and place some of the hand on the forearm like this. So this narration that they end up with, the Hanafi madhab, isn't said by any hadith, but it becomes a new opinion. So this going on as well? So Abu Dharr al Harawi is mixing, and then people who come after him, every person is changing the text to some extent. Now you might say, well, no, it isn't, but it's in the text. Like, look, one of the most rated manuscripts is of Qadi Iyad's Sheikh, who is, is that the time, is Abu Ali as-Sudfi. But Abu Ali as-Sudfi's main student himself changes it against him. And then people said, well, look, Yunini, or you can call him Yunaini. I say Yunini, but that he was commissioned to kind of alter things, and then he sits with a grammarian removing grammatical mistakes. What's that about? So grammatical mistakes we're getting there. And then we don't have Yunini's copy. And somebody made a post saying, oh, Mufti Abu Layth, or sorry, he called me a zindiq, this kafir. He called me a kafir. Said this kafir said we don't know who copied it from him. And we do. The several people did. And one of them was called Shihabuddin al-Nuwairi. Oh, he's a famous scholar. I mean, what are you even on about? So what? How do you know Nuwairi was accurate? Let me tell you about Nuwairi. Nuwairi made several copies, okay, in his lifetime, which he used to sell for a living. He used to sell one copy of Sahih Bukhari for 1,000 dinars, which in his time was the equivalent to almost a year's salary, an annual salary of a soldier in his time. If you check up Lajin, the kind of governor at the time who had set the annual salary, wasn't even 1,000 dinars. And that's what Nuwairi would sell his Sahih Bukhari for. And he made up to 8 very popular copies. And the fifth one he did happens to be what we've got today. And then, because it's the one we've got, oh, it happens to be also the most authentic one. You know, I love these coincidences of convenience. Whatever we happen to have is always the best one as well. So even if he did make these copies, so what? Like, how do you know he never made a mistake? Because Yunini is correcting the mistakes of the other legends before him. He's even correcting grammatical errors. And Yunini bases it on who? He bases it on Ibn Asakir, on Abul Waqt. He bases it also on Kushmayhani, but on Al-Shabawi and on Al-Hamawi. And he's correcting mistakes. You know, so why can't there be mistakes with this one person? But anyway, and the Sultaniya that is based on there gets further amended at least with 100 mistakes and more. So where are those mistakes coming from? So look, and some people had said in this, they'd said that, look, because Sahih al-Bukhari became so widespread, it must be sound. That's not true, because look, the science of hadith does not allow you to just pick up a book and transmit it. That's called wijada. Wijada, according to many ulama, like Qadi Iyad said, that it's impermissible. Many ulama said, even if you accept it, you're not allowed to teach by it. It's the weakest form of transmission. If you're accepting Sahih Bukhari just because of wijada, wijada is barely acceptable. It has to come through authorization. Now the problem is, how do you know? It was authorized because it comes through these manuscripts, and the manuscripts have problems. So the fact that it was very well known, that's like saying the Gospels were very well known. Why don't you accept the Gospels? They were very well known. And people will say, yeah, but you know, the Muslim scholars, but that's being biased now. Like you have a different yardstick for us just because they're Muslim. But the truth is that the scholars would have also used certain things for their own power. So they did have a vested interest. So you can't say they were absolutely objective, because hadith did also bring power to scholars, because they could manipulate certain hadith. They could use, there's been fabricated hadith by many scholars, fabricated hadith. Let's just be honest. Let's not lie. Great scholars who I love, said Awais, one of the sheikhs of Sahih, Imam, the great scholar of the nephew of Imam Malik, but he's one of the teachers of Imam Bukhari. He himself says, I used to fabricate hadith to support the school of Medina. He used to say, I used to fabricate, make them up from scratch. This is the great scholars made up hadith. Look, let's be honest. Like you telling me these hadith, even the hadith to subdue women, you think that these didn't serve a great interest for men? Of course they did. They served a powerful interest. You telling me the hadith about the caliphs didn't serve an interest for the caliphs? Of course they did. So it's interesting, Wahhabi speaks of certain caliphs of the time who come in hadith books. And he said, and Wahhabi says, not a single scholar dared to declare these caliphs and rulers weak, because if they did, they would have got in trouble. So this is my point, that let's just be honest. I've answered that yes, we do accept hadith, we will accept, but really the sunnah, we make a distinction between hadith and sunnah, and the sunnah is already preserved. And the books of hadith, we take them, but they have to meet up to the three conditions, that they can't go against reason, they can't go against the established sources like the Quran, and they can't uproot or the sunnah that has come to us through other sources as well, like the living tradition of fiqh, and they can't uproot an Islamic principle. Cool, so I hope that's of some help. And so really there was nothing. I do look forward to, maybe people will say, and people that say that even, Ibn Taymiyyah said even if Bukhari didn't exist, the deen wouldn't have. I agree, even if Bukhari didn't exist, the deen would be complete. But first of all, agree with me then that Bukhari needs to kind of come down from this elevated status of becoming a god. And that's the book Bukhari. And then, yes, we can talk. Bring these other chains then. Then let each hadith be measured upon its independent chain. And then we will see it's based on its own merit. And then we can weigh them up. And when they say we have all these other mustakhrajat, these books written, where are these books? Which books are you talking about? And they have problems as well, and you know that. So, okay, I hope that's of some help. Guys, whoa, Right, so are people who are supporting Sahih Bukhari wrong in their age? In their articles? It's not that they're wrong, but I feel that they haven't answered the questions. Nobody has answered these questions yet. People are saying they will answer the questions later on. I look forward to that. I look forward to learning as well. If you can enlighten me, alhamdulillah, that's good. But right now, all I'm seeing is you want double standards. You want us to say that, no, because they're Muslim, we should give them a green card. But because these people are non-Muslim, we should be very critical. So I'm just being objective, that's all. And as I said, as Imam Malik taught us, let's have that standard that Imam Malik taught us, that hadith, yes, we accept and reject hadith. Then we wouldn't have the problems that we have today. Right, so, let's go on to, so I've had, once again, Abdullah al-Andalusi. Right, Abdullah al-Andalusi has tried to refute me again, right? Those of you that don't know this person, he's a convert. I don't know what his actual name is, but Abdullah, fair enough, we'll go with Abdullah, that's fine, I have no problem. Abdullah al-Andalusi, he's using because of his mother, his heritage, his European heritage. Andalus is to do with the kind of Al-Andalus, the Spain, Iberian Peninsula. And it's because he's from Portugal. His mother's from Portugal, and he likes to kind of present that and boast that kind of heritage. So Abdullah al-Andalusi has tried to say, well, Mufti Abu Layth, right, and Imam Ghazali, and basically what this our brother Abdullah wants to do is basically establish the caliphate. Tell me something. What is it with these Europeans, man? What is it with this white savior complex? They want to save the brown people. Ah, you Abdullah al-Andalusi, huh? Ah, you Portuguese. You Portuguese. You Vasco da Gama, Vasco da Gama. Those of you that don't know Vasco da Gama, you see, many years, many centuries before our brother Abdullah, one of his ancestors, Portuguese ancestors called Vasco da Gama, he also came to our land of the brown people. He came to India. And shortly after him came the Portuguese Empire. And they did the usual, you know, the killing, the torturing, the raping, the pillaging. They did the usual in Kerala and Goa and the Muslims there. But anyway, centuries later now, mashallah, now, first it was in the name of the Portuguese Empire. Now their offspring has come, mashallah. He's embraced Islam and he's come to bring the Khilafah to us. Oh, bhai. Oh, Vasco da Gama. Oh, Baksh de. That sounds about white to me. Ah, your white privilege. I gotta give it to these white converts, man. No sooner do they embrace Islam that they want to go and save the entire Muslim world. Huh? They want to bring to us, who've had Islam for generations, they want to bring to us the Khilafah. Oh, God. Honestly, you couldn't make this stuff up. This is what they want to do. These people, have they, you know, do they, first of all, do they understand Arabic? No. Have they ever read the Quran in their entire life with its actual meaning? No. Have they ever understood any Hadith or Sunnah or anything in its actual meaning? No. Have they ever studied fiqh? I could ask these people certain questions on their prayer, and I guarantee you they wouldn't know the answers. On their prayer, what they're supposed to pray every day. No, they don't know the answer. Do they know about fast? No. Zakat, Hajj? No. But where do they want to begin? White saviors. Ya salam. Wah. You know, ma hada basharan, in hada illa malakun kareem. This is but an angel. Yeah, leave us people in peace, man. They want to start by saying, first of all, we want to bring the Khilafah to you. Acha. Teri kami thi. Ayo Vasco da Gama. Bienvenido a nuestro conquistador. This is our conquistador, our knight in shining, our white knight in shining armor. You see, this is the issue, and I don't mean this by the way, against other converts. Look, there's many people who do amazing work. They convert to Islam. They surprise us, wow, that they embrace this deen. And legends like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, Sheikh Nuh Hamim Kella, Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad, amazing people turn, things. This was specifically, because I was giving white examples. I mean, there's obviously many, any convert from any race, but I'm just here saying, and they study the deen, they commit themselves to learning, they inspire people, wow. And there's other, I've got many Facebook friends and people who've converted who I hold in great awe, and, many of them online here probably. I've seen Deborah was on there, Robin is usually, amazing human beings, people who, I think like, this is what people should be like, if they convert to Islam. But then you get these others, it's like the person asked, Abu Sufyan, when he wanted to know about the Prophet. He said, did he have in his ancestors anybody who was a king or was power hungry? And Abu Sufyan said no. And he said, okay, fair enough. Because I would have said that they just wanted to return to the legacy of their ancestors. And here we have our Portuguese Vasco da Gama. Ay, Abdullah bhai, Abdullah bhai, who's come here to establish, who's come here to establish the Khilafah and to bring us a white Khalif. Allah, jao, ja, ja, meri jaan, ja, mi amor, go establish the Khilafah for us, please. And this is the kind of nonsense we have to deal with, honestly. These people haven't lived a day in the Muslim world. You know, I'm serious. And they want to establish for us, the brown people, a caliphate system. They haven't lived amongst Muslims. Ulta latka denge inko. These guys will, they'll eat them alive in a single day. Abdullah, go back, go visit Pakistan. Spend a day there or in the Middle East. You'll realize that, you know, this... Or better still, go establish the caliphate. Just go, establish it. Just go. Call us to this white and bright caliphate once it's established. Hum bhi dekhen yaar. It's like, all these people, they want to help us so bad, huh? Allah. How about giving back what your ancestors what your ancestors stole? You know, Imran Khan has asked the British government to return what they looted whilst they were in India. But you get all these people, huh, wanting to help. Vasco da Gama, Queen Victoria, Donald Trump, Abdullah bhai. You know, there's a poet, he says, Har mor pe mil jate hain hamdard hazaron. That on every corner I bump into somebody who wants to help me. Shayad meri basti mein adakar bahut hai. That this is, maybe there's a lot of people who know drama or who know how to act where I live. This is the problem we have today. And why? You see, because he's white, so he becomes the face. And many deluded Muslims, obviously, we have that white savior inferiority complex. So we think, oh yes, oh subhanallah, mashallah, this white brother, this this brother Vasco da Gama is going to recapture the caliphate for us. I mean, ya salam. And this is what really, this HT and this is just a way. This is why I'm against da'wah. Seriously, this is why I'm against da'wah, because this is what it causes. It brings these kind of attention craving nutcases to Islam, who then come and they become deluded with these groups like Hizb Ut Tahrir and these people who, do you know what these people believe, by the way? Let me tell you what they believe. They believe that all kuffar on this earth are not only najas, are impure, and have been created to be subdued and ruled over by Muslims. They believe that the whole world today is living in kufr, in disbelief, including Muslims. They believe that the whole world is split into Dar al-Harb and Dar al-Islam, that the land of war, and today the entire world is Dar al-Harb, land of war. This is what they teach and believe. Now tell me, if we are living in Dar al-Harb, then we are only a step away from declaring the people here as enemy combatants. We're only a step away. Because if we're living in the land of war, then hey, these kuffar, these impure who ought to be subdued kuffar, really are just enemy combatants. That's a step away. And then what's the next step then? This is what they teach in the name of Islam. Islam is all about powering and having a sultan and forcing Islam, and then they can pay us jizya. And this jizya thing is messed up and mixed up. And I'll, inshallah, in the future, maybe next week, do a whole session on jizya to clarify that. This is what they're teaching. Ask them. This is a virus, man. It's breeding hatred. Why do you hate the kuffar? Why? They go, we don't hate the kuffar. But they have to say that now. You see, so if you ask these kind of our Vasco da Gama or these, they're going to say, oh no, we don't hate the kuffar. Oh, but we're just designed. But Allah just wants us to rule them. Abe yaar, who's us? You're Portuguese. You know, who's us? You know, you want to rule the 1.8 billion Muslims of the world. And they can say, no, I just want to set up the caliphate. Power hungry. Nothing but, you know, what is it? We want to rule. What do you want to do when you rule? What is this rule? Money, is that what you want? Power, women, what is it? Sex slaves, is that what you want? What do you want? Rule. And then they shove it back all on Allah and His Messenger. And they say, this is what Allah wanted. This is what His Messenger wanted. Every single hadith about the Khilafah, I'm telling you, is fabricated. The Prophet, in the times of the Arabs, they never even used to use this word. This notion of Khilafah didn't exist. How could the Prophet be talking about a notion that doesn't exist? That's like the Prophet speaking about democracy or speaking about a particular rule that doesn't exist yet. And everybody understands him. Surely they would be asking, wait a minute, what do you mean by that? The notion Khilafah was brought into existence after the Prophet's lifetime. The Sahaba said to Abu Bakr radiallahu an, I know, why don't we name you Khalifa to Rasulullah, the Khalifa of the Messenger, because you've come after him. They ought to know this if this notion existed. All these hadiths were made up, I'm telling you. The 12 Khulafa for Bani Umayyah, this is a made up hadith for the rulers of Bani Umayyah. Come on, it's common sense. Everybody can tell they made that up. These are fabricated hadith. This is just to kind of validate their rule and stuff like that. I mean, look, does it make any sense that the Prophet spoke about something that did not exist? These are conveniences. These are coincidences of convenience. If there's two rulers, kill the latter. It's a very convenient hadith, isn't it, for a ruler? So this is very convenient, isn't it? Oh, I'm the ruler, you're the ruler too. Well, I'm going to kill you. Why? Because, there's a hadith. But there is a convenient hadith here that I must kill you. Wow. You telling me the Sahaba didn't know that? When they started saying who should be the ruler, they said, well, you should have a ruler from the Ansar and a ruler from the Muhajirin. They were dumb and stupid. They didn't know, but the hadith said if there's two, you should kill one. The Sahaba never knew that. The companions never knew that. But so this is what I mean. And then he says, Imam Ghazali wrote in his book, Imam Ghazali. Abbe, kya Imam Ghazali लगाई हुई है? क्या Ghazali? What's going on here? You know, what are you on about, Imam Ghazali? You don't follow Imam Ghazali in anything. You don't follow him in fiqh. You don't follow him in aqidah. You don't follow him in usul. You don't follow him in anything. Have you ever read his Mustasfa, his Wajiz, his Wasit? What do you follow him in? You don't follow Imam Ghazali in anything. And then, but he wrote a book to the ruler of his time. The ruler of his time just ruled a petty little area in the Middle East, in Baghdad, around Baghdad. And this was like every scholar just wrote something to suck up to the king of their time. All the scholars did it. It's nothing new. You know, it didn't become the word of God. Imam Ghazali. They don't follow Ghazali on anything. You know, this is the irony. They don't follow Imam Ghazali on anything. Do you follow him on usul? Is that where you take your usul fiqh from? Do you follow him in fiqh? How he told you to practice the deen? Do you follow him in tasawwuf? Is that what you do? What do you follow Ghazali in? Nothing. I follow him in, he said there must be a caliphate. Look, he said to the king of his time, there were multiple caliphates in his time. You see, when those people in the past wrote about rule, what they meant was as opposed to what? As opposed to anarchy. Khilafah simply meant kings. The kings used to call themselves khulafa, especially Bani al-Abbas. They used to call themselves khulafa. Now, they meant kings, dynasts, as opposed to anarchy, dynasts as opposed to barbarism. They didn't mean kings as opposed to democracy. They didn't have an alternative. This wasn't something they were... You see, when you say, how come Imam Ghazali never wrote democracy? Well, because they didn't have a system of democracy. So he was only comparing it to his discourse. His discourse was lands where there's havoc and there's no ruler and there's civil war between lands where there's a king. So obviously there must be a king, because with a king there is a rule, there is the rule of law. In fact, in his i'tiqad book, he actually goes on to say, if you could read Arabic, goddammit, he goes on to say why there should be a king. He says because with the king, he says that we can have laws, we can have hukuk. If people are oppressed, we can take back rights, because there is law and order. Law and order. That's what they wanted. They just wanted to live a normal life. Imam Ghazali, in the last decade of his life, Jerusalem was conquered by the Crusaders. He lived in Sham, that is the region of Jerusalem. Did Imam Ghazali ever participate in that battle? No. Did he even call people to reconquer from the Crusaders? No. He totally just left. He didn't want anything to do with this. He went back to Baghdad and just started to teach again. He wrote his book on Usul al-Fiqh. He could have been writing a rally to let's do jihad. Some other scholars did. Did Imam Ghazali? No. Kya Ghazali. Ghazali lagai. Ayo Vasco da Gama. This is what happens when we get, illiterate, Islamically illiterate, jahil, kind of like converts who come to Islam and they want to teach us Islam. Never read a single surah in their life with understanding of the Quran. This is it. They've come and they want to start from the pulpit. They want to start by establishing the caliphate. Sounds about white. Your hashtag white privilege. This is the thing, And this is, and he goes on. Mufti Abu Layth said about Ghazali, and but Ghazali said in his book, right? Somebody said, please don't call him a jahil. He is a jahil though. What does he know about? I've said to him, does he know anything about Islam? Are you even a scholar of Islam? Look, at least be a scholar of Islam. Dedicate some of your goddamn life to learning the book of Allah. Can you do that much before you save all of us brown people on this globe, which you're so dying to do as a savior? Can you at least take a bit of time to learn what Allah is saying in the Quran? I can't do that. God forbid. Why would I want to learn Arabic? Why would I want to study the Quran? Why would I want to do this? Why would I want to study Islam or fiqh? Yeah, I know. Let's just establish a khilafah. Hi. This is khilafah. Go establish it. Go. Yeah, if you want to establish it that bad, go. Why don't you go to Portugal? Wahan se shuru kar. Start from Portugal. Or I'll tell you what, go, where do you want to go? Raqqa? Where your other sympathizers like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and other people are? Where do you want to establish? Go establish it. Go establish it. Once it's established, let us know. Yeah, this is why they mislead several, vulnerable Muslims. And this is why I say to people, look, if you know people, your youngsters, and if they start listening to or getting influenced by hate, think groups like Hizb Ut Tahrir, who are a cancer, honestly, just try to steer them away from that kind of nonsense. Shuyukh, if you want people who've converted, then true scholars who've converted, like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, amazing scholar. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf has a lecture on this, by the way. Go to Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, YouTube, he has a lecture on the caliphate. He says this is just a Muslim myth, it's a fantasy. There is no obligation. These are the words of Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. That's a true, somebody who at least dedicated his life to studying Islam, right? Not just a convert face that, because I've got the right, the what is it, the lack of melanin or whatever, I have the right to, our melanin deprived brothers, brother, they have the right to kind of tell us how to establish the Khilafah. So anyway, so those are my words to to mi cariño, to my beloved, un besito, Abdullah bhai. So, is that okay? ¿Entiendes? Or no? Is that no? You don't understand that, or no te gusta, papi? Así no te gusta? Don't you like it like that? But that's what I'll say. Look. This, people, be wary of these kind of claims. I joke and laugh about this, but there are many people who've spent lifetimes getting misguided by these kind of people. Right, so I would advise that, look, anybody, at least if they want to speak about ideas within Islam, then the least is let them be a scholar. Then they can be wrong still. They can still be wrong. They can still be wrong. But at least then they have some substance to what they're saying. Okay. Right, so I've mentioned that these hadith that I've been commanded to fight, etc., are all problematic. I've mentioned this before. Why doesn't HT join ISIS? I totally agree. HT ought to go and join ISIS. Because HT are like the diplomatic version of ISIS. They're like the, like you have a group and then you have like a political wing. They say, oh no, we're not for violence. We're not for violence. And yet their own, if they're given a chance, toba, 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 toba. Anyway, people, as always, it's awesome. Right, HT is Hizb Ut Tahrir, but I don't want to really go on about just them. But my point is, anybody who has that cancerous ideology of wanting to rule the world has a problem. Okay. Salam from Kansas City, Missouri. All right, all right, all right. People, I'm going to leave you with it. I hope I've answered some of these questions. Do reach out to me on Facebook, like my page, both pages. Don't worry about it, man. Don't be, the art of giving people like. Why this tight-fisted? People nowadays are like, yeah, I can't like a page. It's gonna, Anyway, so like, share. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or on Snapchat, Malm 2014. MALM 2014. That's Mufti. It stands for Mufti Abu Layth al-Maliki. Okay, all those people. Look at that from Oldham. Opinions on Shia. I've spoken about the Shia before. I think they are our brethren in faith. Nothing but love for each and all. We need to build bridges between us. Have you had a conversation over social media with Dr. Jonathan Brown? Right. So, okay. I hope I've answered that, guys. Take very good care of yourselves, inshallah. Till next week, as always, stay awesome, stay blessed. Over and out, folks. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.